Hey guys, Thomas the Solar Jr. here, aka Mustached. I'm here to review the video game Resident Evil 2 Remake. Now, before I can officially begin my review, please consider liking, commenting, and subscribing. Also, checking out the second link in my description. I'll head you over to my Patreon page. Any donations are desperately needed. With that out of the way, let me finally talk about Resident Evil 2 Remake. Now, the reason why this one's so late in comparative to when I actually finished the Let's Play, I wanted to try the DLCs once over. Each of them, I was able to accomplish hunks and unlock Tofu, the character Tofu from the original OG Resident Evil 2. I was able to accomplish the lady's route, and those the two others I could accomplish. The other two were too difficult. The other hunk character, as well as the survival mode that is unlocked when you do the other ones. So with that, let's get into the actual story and then gameplay. That's how I always score these, by two sections. So let's start off with the story, which is probably a very interesting element of this game, as you can either choose Claire A or Leon A. And once you complete said story, you'll move on to the second character's B story, and it reverses depending on which character you pick first. With that in mind, the story is pretty simplistic, following the basic formula of Resident Evil 2, the original, with some additional either retakes or relines done along the way. Finding out what Umbrella's up to, meeting up with the one or two survivors along the way, so on and so forth. So I can't really say the story is something that's crazily, it's not like some spectacular, thing. I do appreciate that they decided to keep the B routes, and doing the mix-up is still appreciated after all this time. I felt like that wasn't completely necessary, but again, that replay value that goes to the gameplay section is greatly appreciated. But you are kind of still playing essentially the same story, just from a different character's perspective. No, I'm not too familiar with Resident Evil 2 as some others. Unfortunately, I've not played the original version. I mentioned that in one of the Let's Plays. I mentioned how I used to watch my brother play this game constantly. So I think I've seen somewhere that Claire's story, her A story, is supposed to be the canonical story, I guess. Take that for what it's worth, I guess. And as each character gets into their lengthy parts, they both have a character switch integrated within their stories. We have, for Leon, you get to play as Ada, and for Claire, you get to play as Sherry. Now, unfortunately, in the gameplay section, I am going to talk a little bit more about those two particular parts, because I do feel like they are the weakest parts of each of the character parts. But outside of that, it is still appreciated to get a little bit of extra detail on these other characters that are sort of interacting with this world. And again, following with what was following the original Resident Evil 2 story, I would probably give the story a 6 out of 10. Again, that's anything particularly too crazy. I would have gone lower, but again, I do feel incentivized by the at least giving us players the routes, that replayability thing going on, etc., etc. So I'll stick with the 6 out of 10 for the gameplay. I think that's fair enough. Moving on to the gameplay, which is where I feel the game shines for the majority of it. For the most parts, the controls are very intuitive. I know I said that wrong, but whatever. some words. Anyways, the feeling of where you aim your gun is feels very natural. It feels like you have full control. It never feels like, you know, if you missed a certain shot, you didn't go like, oh, that didn't feel right. You know, there can be instances of that. I didn't encounter any bugs, at least through my Let's Plays, so that's very good in terms of having a complete game, is having it with no bugs. At least, again, to my knowledge, there weren't any bugs. So it plays very smoothly from a controller standpoint. The actual controls themselves are very feasible. They're very easy to understand. You know, your aim button, your shoot button, your quick turn. It teaches you these methods throughout the game. Some of the placements are a little bit awkward. There will probably be more times than not where if you were knowledgeable about Resident Evil 2 before, you probably already know the controls. But if not, I do think that the placement's probably going to make a bit more sense in that regard if you are a new player to the game. So there is that. Things like you are able to discard items when they have a check mark. On the bottom right-hand side, you can delete those items at your leisure. You have your item box, which carries over with you to any location. You have the survival horror aspect of the gameplay, which feels very fluid and feels very fair, at least in the normal difficulty. And that's the other part that I do want to say, is that as a new player of the Resident Evil 2 remake, I do feel like the hardcore difficulty is not made for someone like me. I tried playing Leon's story, and I am currently actually stuck on the boss because of how much ammo I have, and I don't think that particular part is fair, as getting to a boss and not feeling like I have the tools necessary to beat the boss. And that could be just from me panicking and how fast the boss moves and etc, etc. It's a bit hard to judge on that regard, but it is a bit, you know, it does feel a bit cheap when you do use all your bullets and you still are like, oh, I can't do anything now. So there is that. I will also say that further along, as I mentioned, you play as two other characters, both Ada and Sherry. I'll go into each separately. First, I'll talk about Ada, since I did do Leon's story first. I felt like her gimmick, which was controlling her little hacking device around and moving it and like aiming it in certain locations, I felt like that wasn't intuitive enough in terms of like you're suddenly switching. And, like, one of the first things it has you do is, like, or, like, last thing it has you do is, like, this, like, timed hack thing. And you have to know, like, where the hack things are, and you have to, like, flip them the right way. And, like, that caused me to die because I was, like, figuring out, like, okay, where does this one go? Like, okay, does that one affect this one? I think, maybe, I don't know, it doesn't seem to. Okay, I'm running out of time. Like, it created that first panic, which led to that death, which felt very unfair, I feel. And I actually feel the very same way for Sherry as well. Her gameplay mechanic is that run and hide mechanic, and that if you get caught by the person who's holding you there, you lose. And if you've seen my Let's Play, when the Sherry bit comes up, you'll notice that the first time I initially ran through to the front door because that's where I thought I had to go, only to find out that that was not where I needed to go. I needed to go to a separate room to the right-hand side. And the only reason I even found that out is because I looked it up, because I was very confused and very lost in terms of, like, my mind actually didn't parse that I was supposed to backtrack to that location. I thought I was supposed to escape through the front. Thus, I, like, died, like, 3 times, I want to say, before I was like, okay, I'm just gonna look this up. because I have no clue what I'm supposed to do, and then my brain actually went, oh, I'm really that dumb, or the game didn't set that up properly enough. It's one of those two, and I don't think that that's a good indicator if that happens twice in both stories, if you catch my drift. There is an instance in the Resident Evil 2 remake where you can insta-die. That one, I did insta-die the first time. I actually moved in the same direction as the giant gator creature. That I would fault that a little bit more on me. I wasn't paying attention purely on that, so I would blame that one on myself a lot more. But the other two, I did feel like introducing these new mechanics or these new gameplay styles only to confuse players, and I don't know, I felt like those were way more unjustified and a little bit more unfair in that regard. Other than those two elements being like the low points of the gameplay, other than that, I will say the game is still pretty damn remarkable in every other regard. Again, the controllers feel nice. It feels really nice to play. The survival horror aspect when you're playing the main characters feels really good. It feels balanced, at least in the normal difficulty, for someone who's new to the franchise. Or at least the second one, I should say. So there is that. So I gave the main gameplay also a 6 out of 10. I do feel like they could have made both Ada's and Sherry's parts a bit more clear, like give you a little bit more time to digest like what is actually happening, like give you a few more rooms to figure out like this is how you hack, and then give the players like a little bit more time in that room. I feel like you could, even if you do it perfectly, by the way, you still cut it pretty close. Like if you kill that much time, you're gonna die. So I would suggest that if they did an update for that game, give Ada a little bit more time in that specific room where she's locked in, and give, I don't know what you would do to fix Sherry's story. I think slow down the fat guy a little bit. He's able to catch up to you pretty fast, even when I went down the direction the next time, by the way. The second time after I figured it out, I ran down the hallway and I got caught still. I thought that was very unfair. I did not understand how he did that, but whatever. Just balance those parts out a little bit more, and I think you have yourself a solid normal game experience. In terms of hardcore difficulty, all I can say is I'm not good enough for that. That's all I can say, really. I don't know how to beat it yet in hardcore mode. So 6 out of 10 for the normal gameplay. Now for the DLC, and I will create a different score, I guess, for this. These gameplays are a lot more difficult in their gameplay. They require you to, say for example, when you're playing the Hunk DLC, what equipment you have, that is the equipment you have to go through the entire little section that they have set up for you. And there are various zombies, various lickers, various other plant creatures, Mr. X, you have it all thrown at you in this zone. I was actually able to beat it. I found a strategy very effective. I minimalized the amount of bullets I was using. For example, early on, I was weaving around early on, finding those spots to sort of seep through. When I got caught, I used either the knife early on, or I used the flash grenades earlier on as I was proceeding to get closer and closer to the chopper that it has set up at the end of the route. And as you near the end of the route, there is like a cluster of enemies, and that is where I saved up, because Hunk has 3 grenades, so I saved up my 3 grenades for that section, and then I threw the grenades outward, and that was able to allow me a path forward, even in the danger state, by the way. That's how close I was to dying with Mr. X tailing me still. And I was able to get to the chopper at the very minimum. So I was able to accomplish that unlock tofu mode, which is just tofu with the various knives, and I have not beaten that yet. I assume getting through that is insanely difficult. You have to make sure what guys you're getting caught by are from the front, and that you can knife them, and that you're, again, weaving and doing all of that stuff still. The very end of that level must be a nightmare, because there's that cluster of enemies that's going to be waiting for you, and you're probably going to get grabbed, I want to say, 3 times at the very minimum in that location, so yeah, that's probably like going to be super hard. The other ones I kind of also got used to after some practice. They also alleviate the difficulty by providing a training mode, which was a vast help for at least the first 2 of them, in regards into just like finding the paths, finding the ways to like save ammunition, save etc, etc. So those training modes I would highly recommend when you're first initially playing these, to try those out first, just to get your brain in that mode of like, you know, where enemies are, where they're heading, how many bullets you have, how much you actually have to go through to get to each ending, etc, etc. All of that's going to be very useful. The training modes are very helpful in that regard. They still haven't helped me beat the last 2 DLCs, because I'm just not that good enough. So I will give these DLCs a 7 out of 10, actually. With the additional help of those training modes, I feel like that's the kind of help that I wanted for both Sherry and Ada. Just like that little, like, here's like how you get used to these modes. Like, I would have wished for, like, here's how you get used to these 2 characters. Let's give you a little bit more setup here. So I actually do think that the DLCs were better handled in that regard. So that is my full review. That's a 6 for the story, a 6 for the gameplay, and a 7 for the DLC. So if you enjoyed this review of Resident Evil 2 Remake, then please feel free to like, comment, and subscribe. Also make sure to check out those links in the description. One will head you over to my Discord server, the other to my Patreon page. Any donations are greatly appreciated, and until next time, everyone, bye-bye!